I gave them everything: love, time, money, my soul, until one evening, surrounded by a feast I had paid for, I heard a betrayal that shattered me. My son and his wife laughed at the dinner I had prepared and called me an unofficial housewife. So I left them the mortgage payment and moved out. But then I found out the hidden truth that had been buried for decades. And with the help of the court, I evicted them from my house. If you've ever felt like a ghost in your own house, this one's for you. If you've ever felt invisible in your own life, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment sharing your story. I'm here to listen, just like I wish someone had listened to me. I can still hear the soft clink of wine glasses, the gentle hum of blues music drifting through the home I'd bought, and the aroma of the herb-crusted chicken I'd prepped at dawn, simmering all day while I dashed around town for a dinner I wasn't even meant to attend. But there I was because Sophie forgot to mention her parents were dropping by. Again. And the place had to be spotless. Again. I should have seen the warning signs and left. I should have sensed trouble the second her mom's eyes flicked over me, half intrigued, half dismissive, and she said, "And who's this?" Sophie didn't hesitate. "Oh," she chuckled like it was the best joke ever. "That's Laura, our unofficial housekeeper. Keeps everything in order." The whole table erupted in laughter. Even my son Noah joined in. Their laughter sliced through the air like shards of glass, each chuckle a fresh cut. I stood frozen, clutching the empty wine bottle I'd fetched from the cellar. I forced a polite smile, as if the ground wasn't crumbling beneath me, as if my heart wasn't shattering bit by bit. I mumbled an excuse, set the bottle on the counter, and slipped quietly to my room. As I passed the hallway mirror, my reflection caught me off guard. A stranger's face worn by years of giving. For a fleeting moment, I wondered if my life had been built on a lie I couldn't yet name. Their laughter echoed behind me. Not one of them, not even Noah, my own flesh and blood, bothered to set her straight to say, "That's my mom," or anything at all. That night sleep never came. I perched on the edge of my bed, staring at the door I'd painted myself back when we first settled in. I could still picture the day I signed the mortgage papers, my name, my credit, my savings. Noah had just finished college. Sophie wasn't even around yet. They had nothing and I gave them everything. And now? Now I was the maid. Come morning I brewed coffee like always. I fed the cat Sophie barely noticed. When she breezed downstairs in her workout gear, glued to her phone instead of saying hello, I waited. She finally glanced up. I handed her the keys, every single one. Front door, back door, garage, mailbox. "What's this?" she asked, her perfectly groomed brows knitting together. I smiled. "Good luck covering the mortgage now." She blinked, confused. "What?" I brushed past her, walking down the hallway, past the pictures I'd hung, the furniture I'd picked out, the walls I'd painted. I didn't grab anything. Just my purse and the jacket I'd worn when I brought Noah home from the hospital. I didn't say goodbye. Noah's voice called after me as I reached the front door, but I kept moving. He chased me barefoot into the driveway, but I didn't pause. I didn't slam the car door. I shut it softly, calmly, because something inside me had shifted. Not in a loud, angry way, but with a quiet, unshakable certainty. It wasn't fury or sorrow. It was clarity, and that was the scariest part because clarity doesn't shout or plead. Just knows. And I knew for the first time ever that I was done. I wasn't sure where I was headed, but I knew where I wasn't staying. In my rearview mirror I caught a glimpse of Noah standing in the driveway, shell-shocked. He didn't realize what he'd just lost. Neither did I, not fully. They say you don't know you were suffocating until you finally take a breath. That first night in the tiny apartment my great-aunt Clara left me, it wasn't freedom. Not yet. It was a heavy, echoing quiet, like dust settling over everything. The place smelled like the past. Creaky floorboards, faded wallpaper, a heater that grumbled like it was tired of life. I dropped my bag on the kitchen table and just stood there, unsure whether to cry or laugh. I did neither. I stared at the worn tiles, thinking about the house I'd left behind. But it wasn't my home anymore. Not for me. Over the next few days I drifted through the apartment like a shadow. I slept on the couch because the bedroom's bed frame was broken. I ate peanut butter sandwiches and warmed up cans of soup. I didn't reach out to anyone, not because I had no one, but because no one reached out to me. Noah sent one vague text a week later. "You okay?" I didn't respond. After that, nothing. No calls, no emails, just silence, as if I'd already faded from his world. Maybe Sophie told him not to. Or worse, maybe he just didn't care. I kept replaying that dinner, their laughter, Noah's laughter. I raised that boy on my own after my ex-husband walked out. I gave up my dreams, my career, my life. I scrubbed motel rooms at midnight and stocked shelves at sunrise just to keep us afloat. When my parents passed and left me that insurance money, I poured every cent into buying a house. A home. I never asked Noah for a dime, never charged him rent. And yet, in Sophie's world, I'd become the help. That evening, I found a crumpled grocery list in Noah's handwriting on the counter. Items I'd bought, meals I'd cooked. I tore it into pieces, my hands trembling, and let the scraps fall like confetti. At night, I started writing. I dug out old spiral notebooks, the kind I used to get for Noah in grade school, and filled page after page. Not for anyone else, just for me. I wrote things I'd never dared say aloud. How I'd linger in the kitchen hoping for a thank you. How I'd cry in the garage after they'd head out to dinner without inviting me. How I'd pretend to sleep so I wouldn't hear them poking fun at my favorite shows in the living room I paid for. Then one day, while rummaging for a light bulb in the upstairs closet, I stumbled across an old metal trunk Clara used to keep tucked under her sewing table. It was heavy, rusted. I pried it open, expecting scraps of fabric or buttons, but instead found stacks of envelopes. One caught my eye, addressed to me in Clara's familiar scrawl, dated 30 years back. If you're reading this, you've come back, and I'm sorry you had to. My pulse raced as I unfolded the brittle, yellowed pages. Inside were hospital forms, handwritten notes, and a single photo of a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket, not Noah. The name read Daniel Harper. I read the letter 3 times before it sank in. Clara had been a nurse at the hospital where Noah was born. She'd always had suspicions. She'd noticed something strange in the nursery that night. A last-minute room change, a mix-up with the tags. But by the time she flagged it, the babies were already home with their families. Clara never shared the truth with me. She wrote that fear held her back, that she prayed she'd gotten it wrong. Years later, a former colleague from the hospital, retiring and unburdened by loyalty, slipped her a copy of a discreet settlement between the hospital and another family, confirming her suspicions. That's when certainty hit her. Noah wasn't my son. My hands shook so hard I thought I might faint. I stared at the photograph, at the name Daniel Harper. My brain couldn't wrap itself around it. If this was real, who was Noah? Who was I to him? Then, something unexpected washed over me. Not sorrow. Not anger. Freedom. Not because I didn't care for Noah, but because suddenly decades of heartache, a feeling like an outsider in my own life, clicked into place. That distance I always sensed from him, maybe it wasn't in my head. Maybe he felt like a stranger too. Maybe I wasn't losing my mind after all. I stayed up all night, poring over every scrap in that trunk. Clara had saved everything: DNA results, sworn statements, a brief news clipping about the Harper family. They were well off, well educated, rooted right here in town. My real son had been growing up just a few miles away this whole time. I carefully folded the letters, tucked them into a fresh envelope, and slid them into my bedside drawer. Then I stood in front of the mirror for what felt like forever. The woman staring back was a stranger, but for the first time in ages I didn't feel ashamed of her. She was battered, sure, but she was coming alive, and the world wasn't ready for what that meant. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't soothe, it punishes. That's the silence I lived in for weeks after reading Clara's letter. The truth buzzed inside me like a live wire. Too dangerous to touch, too heavy to ignore. I didn't contact Noah. I didn't search for Daniel. I just drifted through my days. Each morning I'd brew a single mug of coffee, gaze out the grimy kitchen window, and wrestle with who I was now. The Laura who raised Noah wasn't the same woman who read those letters. That Laura was a mom, once a wife, a caretaker who gave everything. But without that role, who was I? One chilly evening, the apartment's heater gave out. I lit a candle, wrapped myself in blankets, and sat on the couch with the hospital files spread across my lap. I'd read them 100 times, every word, every signature, every timestamp. It all added up. It was undeniable. My true son, Daniel Harper, was born the same night as Noah, in the same hospital wing, in a place that later paid off another family to keep the secret buried. Clara had copied every document before she passed, leaving me the fragments of a truth stolen from me. Grief hit, but not for Noah. I mourned the years I could have had with Daniel. The birthday candles, the first school days, the bandaged knees, the science fairs. All the moments I thought I was sharing with my son belonged to someone else. Yet oddly, I didn't resent Noah. My love for him wasn't tied to biology. It was boundless, or so I'd believed. But when the boy you raise doesn't stand up for you, doesn't even see you, it forces you to question everything. It was a Thursday afternoon when I finally pulled myself together. I'd been hiding too long. I wasn't ready to face Noah, not yet, but I could take a small step. I walked into town and stood across the street from a cozy bookstore on Oak and Maple, Harper's Books. It was painted a warm burgundy with hand-painted signs in the windows. I'd walked by it countless times and never paid attention. But there he was, Daniel. I didn't need to ask. He looked about 32, maybe a bit older, neat haircut, wire-rimmed glasses. He was helping a young woman pick out a novel, his voice calm and kind, his movements steady but gentle. I stood there, heart racing, eyes locked on the son I'd never known. And I wept right there on the sidewalk. Not loud sobs, just silent tears that slipped down my face and soaked into my scarf. I didn't go inside, not that day. But I came back the next day. And the day after. It turned into a quiet routine. I'd stroll the block, sit on a bench by the corner, pretend to scroll my phone or sip coffee from a to-go cup. And I'd watch Daniel live a life I'd never been part of. It wasn't creeping, it was grieving, but also preparing, because bit by bit I was piecing things together. While I lingered outside that bookstore, I started noticing details, the delivery schedules, the names of regular customers, the store's rhythm. I was watching, yes, but not just Daniel. I began keeping tabs on Noah and Sophie too, discreetly. Their habits were burned into my memory. Sophie was always posting online, flaunting her favorite cafes, fitness classes, and wine bars. It wasn't hard to track their movements, and what I saw turned my stomach. They weren't struggling, they were faking it. Sophie's business, some kind of wellness coaching scam, was all flash and no substance. Leased offices bought followers, credit cards stretched to the limit to keep up the facade. And Noah? He'd walked away from his job 8 months ago. Sophie called it pursuing a new vision. I called it denial. They were stacking a fragile tower of lies, oblivious to the storm brewing. I kept my discoveries to myself for now. Instead, I started a second notebook, different from the first, which was raw with emotion and hurt. This one was calculated. I logged dates, names, business records, public filings. I wasn't just mourning anymore, I was strategizing. They thought I'd vanished, that I was invisible, unimportant. I was more alive than I'd ever been, and I was ready to show them exactly who I was. The first time I saw Daniel face to face, words failed me. It was a drizzly Wednesday, the bookstore nearly deserted, and he was shelving memoirs, softly humming to himself. I'd lingered outside too long, and when he glanced through the window, our eyes locked. He offered a friendly, open smile, nothing deep, just the kind you give a passerby. To him, I was just another face, a nobody. My chest tightened. I spun away, fumbling with my phone to look busy, but my trembling hands betrayed me. I hurried around the corner, barely reaching my car before tears spilled out. How do you tell someone their whole life began with a mistake? How do you face a grown man and say, "You're not who you think, and neither am I"? Back home, I pulled out Clara's letter and read it 4 more times. She hadn't just stumbled on the truth, she'd dug for it. The name Daniel Harper wasn't a hunch. It was fact, backed by settlement documents. The hospital kept me in the dark because I was never supposed to know. And the Harpers? They must have suspected something, enough to take the hush money. But I wasn't after vengeance against them. I wasn't even sure what I wanted. I just needed to know him, to see if meeting the real Daniel could ease the hollow ache inside me. So I kept going back. I started small, stepping inside to buy a paperback. Daniel rang it up himself. "Nice pick," he said with a grin. "These are rare finds nowadays." His voice was warm, oddly comforting, and it made my throat catch. His fingers grazed mine as he handed me the bag. Just for a moment. I nodded. "You run this place?" "Kinda," he chuckled. "My folks helped me start it. They're retired now, so I keep things humming." Of course they helped. Of course he had a foundation, not like Noah, who'd had nothing but my endless hustle, my sacrifices, only to toss me aside as a punchline. Daniel had parents, but not me. And Noah had me, but never valued what I poured into him. The universe had jumbled the pieces, leaving us all cut by the wrong edges. I started dropping by the bookstore every few days, keeping it light. Sometimes I'd buy a mystery novel, sometimes I'd just wander the aisles. Daniel started to recognize me. "You're back," he'd say, that easy grin lighting up his face. We'd chat about the rain, new releases, or local festivals. I never gave him my name, not yet. The timing wasn't right. Meanwhile, in the wreckage of my old life, things were crumbling. Noah sent one text after a month of silence. "Mom, you okay?" That was it. After everything, that's all he had. I didn't respond. I was done talking. But I dug deeper into their world. I checked the house deed, it was still in my name. Sophie had tried to refinance behind my back. Rejected. She couldn't swing the mortgage. Noah wasn't working. I could have kicked them out right then, but that felt too quick. No, I wanted them to feel the slow sinking dread. To realize the ground they stood on wasn't just shaky. It was mine. Every night I wrote. My second journal was precise, clinical. Every receipt, every snippet of conversation, every time Daniel mentioned a favorite poet or a childhood camping trip, I noted it, not to weaponize it, but to know the son I never raised. And between those lines, the truth sharpened. Noah didn't disrespect me because of a hospital mix-up. He did it because he chose to, because Sophie egged him on, because somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me as a person to honor and started seeing me as someone to ignore. But Daniel, who didn't even know me, showed more warmth in a 5-minute chat than Noah had in a decade. I wasn't ready to tell Daniel the truth. Not yet, but I was getting there. When the moment came, I wouldn't just reveal who I was. I'd lay out everything, the hospital's mistake, the switch, the life ripped away from us. But first, I had to watch the life I'd already walked away from fall apart. Once the final piece dropped, I wouldn't look back. I never meant to become a ghost in my own story. But sometimes you have to step into the shadows to see people clearly. After that day in the bookstore, something shifted inside me. Not a sudden jolt, but a gradual thaw, like sunlight creeping over a frost-covered meadow. Quiet. Unstoppable. I didn't hurry. This wasn't just about connecting with the son I'd lost. It was about rediscovering myself. I started carrying myself with more confidence, speaking with more conviction. I picked up a used laptop and began organizing my notes into folders, dates, facts, names. This wasn't a journal anymore. It was a blueprint, a map, a lifeline. One thing stood out starkly. Noah and Sophie's life was a flimsy facade. The house they lived in, my house, was still legally mine. Sophie's business, Sophie Soares, was a hollow shell. Fake reviews, staged clients. She'd spun a brand out of cliches and Instagram filters, peddling self-help nonsense while leasing a flashy car she couldn't pay for. I found her LLC filings online, checked tax records, read business reviews. Every post she shared was a performance. Every event they attended was a staged photo. And underneath it all, debt. Crippling debt. Overdrawn credit cards. A defaulted loan. Noah's lingering student loans. They were drowning in bills but too vain to admit it. Or maybe too delusional. That's when I saw it clearly. One tug, and their world would collapse. But I held off. Not yet. I had one more step to take first. Daniel. I kept visiting the bookstore. And he still didn't know who I was. But each visit chipped away at my fear. Daniel and I chatted about books, life's little moments, and the small stuff, TV shows, the best coffee spots, the hum of city life. One afternoon, we grabbed a table at the cozy cafe next door. And he shared how he'd nearly become a history teacher, but got swept up in his passion for books instead. "You remind me of someone," he said, stirring his latte. His brow furrowed like he was chasing a memory. "I can't quite pin it down." I grinned. "Maybe an old-school librarian?" He chuckled. "Could be." That exchange lingered with me for days. It wasn't just that I liked him. I felt a connection, not just from Clara's files or the faded photo she left, but in how he carried himself. The way he listened to people, his quiet confidence, it mirrored something in me. It was in his steady posture, his calm presence. I started dreaming of a life that never happened, one where I'd raised him, where we'd whip up brownies in the kitchen, where I'd cheer him on at baseball games. I could see it so clearly it hurt, but I couldn't rewind time. So I focused on what came next. My first move was calling a lawyer, not for vengeance, but for fairness. I wanted the house sold. It was mine by every right. I'd made the down payment, covered every bill, and never signed it over. Noah always brushed it off with, "We'll get it in both names eventually, no hurry." No hurry for him, of course. I was footing the bill. Now I wanted my name back, my rights. And if not the house itself, then its legal worth. I met with a lawyer in the city, a no-nonsense woman my age who got it. She listened without a hint of pity. When I laid out the story, she gave a slow nod and said, "We'll file the motion by Friday." I signed the paperwork with a steady hand. That night, I strolled by the house. The porch light glowed. Sophie was on the swing, scrolling her phone, a glass of rose in hand. Inside, Noah sprawled on the couch, lost in a video game. Their lives chugged along, clueless that the earth beneath them was already shifting. This wasn't about hurting them. It was about setting things right. When the house sold, they'd taste the helplessness I'd lived with for years. Maybe then they'd get what it feels like to be tossed aside. I didn't yell or make a scene. I watched, waited, and walked away. The first domino had tipped, and they didn't even notice. I've always believed silence packs more punch than noise. That real strength isn't in shouting, but in knowing you're right deep in your bones. The day the official notice landed in Noah and Sophie's mailbox, I was at a cafe near the courthouse, stirring sugar into my chai with a peace I hadn't felt in forever. My lawyer said they'd get it by noon. My phone lit up, Noah. I watched it buzz until it stopped, then flipped it face down, letting the quiet do the talking. It wasn't that I didn't want to hear him. I just wasn't ready for his excuses. Later I checked my email. His message was short. "Mom, what's going on? Please call. Sophie's losing it." Of course she was. The mortgage was looming. And they couldn't refinance because the person they thought was too spineless to matter held the deed. They never saw me coming. A week later, Sophie called. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was taut, barely holding it together. Laura, we need to talk. This is a huge misunderstanding. Noah says you're going through something and we're here for you. But this is putting our whole life in jeopardy, and that's not right. Played it twice. She called the house hers. My silence grew sharper, more intentional. They didn't get it yet, but they would. 2 days later, Noah showed up at my apartment. I saw him through the peephole, hair messy, eyes shadowed, a man coming apart. I didn't open the door. He stood there forever, knocked once then twice and said, "Mom, please, don't do this." I stayed still, hand on the knob, but didn't turn it. I let him stew in the sting of being ignored, just like I had for years. The next week, my lawyer locked in the paperwork to list the house. I'd get every penny of the profit, legally, morally, emotionally, it was all mine. The deed was solely in my name, and my lawyer confirmed Noah and Sophie had no legal claim, as they'd never contributed to the mortgage or been added to the title. Sophie tried to fight it, claiming she'd added value. My lawyer smirked and said, "Let her try proving that in court." She couldn't because she'd only ever invested in optics. And now those were fading one post at a time. Word spread. Sophie's parents stopped liking her social media updates. Clients started pulling away. She posted a video whining about outdated property laws. People saw right through it. Me? I stayed quiet, didn't post a thing. I just kept showing up at Daniel's bookstore. We had coffee again. Bonded over a classic novel we both loved. He suggested a memoir. "It's about loss," he said, "but also letting go." I nodded, swallowing hard. "Sounds like something I'd get into," I said. "Maybe I would. But not yet." I wasn't done mourning or forgiving. At home, I started packing away old photos, Noah as a toddler, school pictures, birthdays where I did all the work and got none of the thanks. I didn't toss them, just boxed them up. The woman who gave everything was gone. The woman in her place? She wasn't mad. She was awake. The papers were signed, the house was hitting the market, and across town in that warm burgundy bookstore, my real son chuckled at a customer's joke, oblivious that his world was about to shift too, in the best way. Not every loss is a tragedy. Some are just beginnings. Wearing masks. I always thought masks were for Halloween parties, but Sophie wore hers like a permanent fixture, polished, smiling, untouchable. The kind of woman who knew how to tilt her head for a selfie, how to pitch her voice just so in a crowd. But masks? They crack eventually, and I was about to break hers wide open. The plan hit me one morning while flipping through the local business listings. I'd already collected plenty of dirt. Credit issues, shady Instagram deals, missed mortgage payments, but I wasn't after gossip. I needed hard evidence, something they couldn't dodge or twist. So I reached out to a local business consultant, a guy named Paul, soft-spoken, sharp, and discreet. I told him I wanted a thorough audit of a company. Nothing shady, just a private look into its bones. I handed him the name. Sophie Soares LLC. He got to work. A week later, he slid a tidy folder across my table. What was inside? Even I wasn't ready for it. Sophie's entire operation was a sham. No tax filings for the past 6 months. Invoices faked to look like they came from real clients who didn't exist. Photo shoots staged in leased spaces she passed off as home renovations. Her partnerships were just affiliate links with pumped-up numbers. She wasn't just acting successful. She was scamming everyone. I looked at Paul and asked, "Will this hold up if it gets out?" He met my gaze and said, "If this hits the public, she's done. Financially. Professionally." That's when I made my move. I printed every page. Then I tracked down the address of Sophie's parents, the same folks who chuckled in my dining room, sipping wine while their daughter mocked me in my own home. I mailed them the folder, no return address, no name. Just a single note on top. Everything you believe is a facade. 2 days later, the first signs showed. Sophie's Instagram went dark. No stories, no polished morning routines. Her usual backdrop of pastel yoga mats and overpriced smoothies vanished, replaced by a single shaky story of her staring into the camera, her perfect mascara smudged, her voice cracking as she promised big updates soon. Her latest post, some vague quote about being misjudged, was swarmed with odd comments. Then, like a house of cards, her world started to fold. Her website went down for updates. Her next wellness retreat was scrapped for personal reasons. And the best part? A friend from the old neighborhood, still following her online, told me Sophie's mom was spotted storming out of her house, yelling into her phone, face flushed, bag swinging like a weapon. Whatever went down behind those doors, it wasn't curated or cute. Noah called me that night. I let it ring. His voicemail was desperate. Mom, I don't know what's going on. Sophie's parents cut us off. Someone sent them papers, stuff about her business. They think we faked it. Did you do this? I didn't answer. He was finally seeing her for who she was, and himself too. He'd spent years propping up a woman who tore through everything, starting with me. Let him stew in it. Let him feel the weight. That evening I wandered to the bookstore. Daniel was locking up but waved when he saw me. Back again, he said, swinging the door open. You might as well get a job here. I laughed. Maybe I will. We ended up sitting on the floor, surrounded by boxes of new books. He was sorting them and I pitched in without being asked. Why do you keep coming here? He asked, not mean, just curious. The question hit me hard. I looked at him, really looked, and saw it. He had my eyes. I hadn't noticed before. I like how this place feels, I said. Like nothing's pretending to be something it's not. He tilted his head, studying me. Yeah, me too. We worked quietly after that, no chatter, no more questions. But in that silence something clicked. Not the full truth, not yet, but a spark. Connection. For the first time I didn't feel like a shadow in someone else's story. I felt noticed. The woman who'd once faded into the background of her own kitchen? She was gone. In her place was someone they never saw coming. Someone they should have never underestimated. I used to think heartbreak was a sudden crash, like a car wreck or a door slamming. But sometimes it's slower, like a pipe leaking drip by drip, until the whole house floods. Noah was finally caught in the deluge. By then the news had hit him. The house was officially on the market. Sophie's mask had shattered, her business exposed, her reputation in tatters. With no one else to blame, Noah did what he always did. He came crawling back to me. I heard the knock before I saw him. It was a calm afternoon, and I was sipping chamomile tea when 3 soft taps echoed through the apartment, tentative, like he wasn't sure he'd be let in or turned away. I opened the door slowly. He looked rough, like sleep had forgotten him. Unshaven, skinnier than I remembered, shirt creased like he'd grabbed it from a pile. Mom, he said, voice breaking. Can I come in? I didn't say a word, just stepped aside. He shuffled in and stood in the middle of the room. Awkward, like he didn't know where to put himself. We stayed silent for a long stretch. Then he cracked. Why are you doing this? He asked. To us. I nearly laughed. Us. As if there'd been an us in forever. I settled into the armchair across from him, steady, unshaken. I'm not doing anything to you, Noah. I'm doing something for me. His jaw tightened. You're selling the house. My house. I grew up there. And you threw it away, I said, my voice quiet but firm. You let your wife turn me into a joke. You stood there, watched it happen, laughed along. You never even said sorry. He didn't argue, just stared at the floor. I thought you were overreacting, he muttered. I didn't know it cut you that deep. I looked at him, unblinking. That's the issue, Noah. You never cared enough to find out what hurt me. You just figured I'd always be there. Picking up your messes, paying your way. Smiling while you and Sophie chipped away at who I was. He flinched. I saw the signs, Mom, her little jabs, the way she'd roll her eyes when you spoke. I ignored them because I thought she was just stressed that we were a team. Sophie's not who I thought. That's no surprise to me. He finally met my eyes, his own glassy. I've lost everything. I didn't waver. No, you gave it up. The silence hung heavy. I miss you, he whispered. I sat up straighter. I raised you, I said. Fed you, clothed you, gave up everything for you. And you let me be humiliated in the home I paid for. His lip quivered. I thought she was helping me. I thought we were building something. You built a house of lies, I said. And now it's collapsing. He stood, pacing the small room. So that's it? You just walk away. I crossed to the kitchen drawer and pulled out the envelope Clara had left me. I held it tightly. I'm going to tell you something now, I said. And you need to listen. Really listen. He nodded, wary. I handed him the envelope. These are your birth records, I said. Read them. Noah sat down, peeling open the envelope with slow, careful movements. His brows knit together, then dropped as he scanned Clara's letter, the hospital documents, the DNA test Clara had quietly arranged years later. He looked up, eyes wide with shock. This can't be true. It is. You're saying I'm not your son? I'm saying you weren't born to me. But I raised you like you were. I poured every bit of myself into you. Even when you pushed me away. His face drained of color. So who's your real son? I stayed quiet. He sat there, stunned, mouth agape, the papers shaking in his hands. I don't know who I am anymore, he whispered. Now you know how I felt, I said, for years. He didn't cry, not exactly, but something inside him shattered. I saw it in his eyes. I didn't feel anger or triumph, just a calm resolve, because I'd finally spoken the truth that needed to be heard. I walked him to the door. He turned, his eyes begging. Can we fix this? I held his gaze. I don't know, I said. But it's not my job to try anymore. I shut the door softly behind him, not with malice but with closure, because for the first time, I wasn't the one keeping it open. It took me 3 days to figure out how to approach Daniel. I rehearsed the words in front of my bathroom mirror, in my car, even in the grocery store, gripping a bag of apples while muttering half-finished sentences. I'm your mother. There was a mix-up. You've lived a life that wasn't meant to be yours. And so have I. But nothing felt right. How do you drop a bombshell like that and expect someone to walk away whole? Still, I had to try. Daniel was at the bookstore as always. The golden afternoon light streamed through the windows, dusting the shelves and casting soft shadows across the worn wooden floor. It felt like a sanctuary, a place where honesty belonged. When he looked up and grinned, I nearly bolted. But I stayed. Hey, he said. Perfect timing. We just got some rare poetry collections in. I swallowed hard. Actually, I said, I came to talk. He paused, catching the weight in my voice. Sure. Let's go out back. He led me through a side door to a small break room. A kettle on the counter, a lumpy couch, a scratched-up table. Real unpolished life. We sat down. I've been coming here for a reason. I started, my hands twisting together. I figured, he said gently. You're not exactly here for the books. I let out a small, bittersweet laugh. No, I'm not. Then I slid Clara's envelope across the table. The letter, the birth records, the DNA proof. What's this? He asked, wary. Something that's going to change everything. He waited, eyes steady. 32 years ago, I said, my voice cracking. There was a mistake at the hospital. 2 babies were switched at birth. His brows furrowed, confusion spreading. My son, I went on, was given to another family. And theirs was given to me. He froze. I raised him, I said. Loved him with all I had. But he didn't love me back. Not really. His eyes searched mine, piecing together what I wasn't saying. You think I know you are. He stared at the envelope, then picked it up with unsteady hands. He read in silence. Clara's letter, the timeline, the hospital's quiet confession. Every second stretched endlessly. When he finished, he set the papers down, fingers lingering on them like they were an anchor. This is a lot, he said finally. I know. And you're Laura. Yes. His eyes glistened. I don't feel anything. Not yet. You don't have to, I said. I'm not here to claim a spot in your life. I just needed you to know. He nodded slowly. Why now? Because I couldn't carry the silence anymore. The truth deserved to be free. He leaned back, exhaling sharply. I have parents. They raised me well. I know. I'd never ask you to change that. We sat in that cramped room, surrounded by the smell of old books and chamomile tea, and I felt something new. Not joy, not resolution, but the lightness of no longer bearing that weight alone. He stood, pacing a little. I don't know what to do with this, he said, raw and honest. I don't either. But I don't hate you. My eyes welled up. That's more than I hoped for. He turned to me. You didn't have to come. But you did. I couldn't not come, I said. He nodded, a quiet understanding settling in. Can we take it slow? He asked. I don't want to force this into something it's not. I wouldn't want anything else. He gave a faint tentative smile. Want to stay for tea? I smiled back. I'd love to. We didn't touch the files again that day. We talked about novels, the weather, how he couldn't stand wind chimes but loved a good rainstorm. The past sat between us, heavy but unspoken, and we'd started something. Not a bond yet, but a possibility. By the time fall swept in, the leaves weren't the only things shifting. The house sold quicker than I expected, fetching more than I'd dreamed. Noah and Sophie had 30 days to clear out. No extensions, no negotiations. I didn't kick them out of spite. I did it because that house had been my cage for too long. Watching them pack up their polished life, every throw pillow, succulent, and overpriced lamp bought on credit, felt like watching a stage crew strike a set. The show was over. The curtain had fallen. The day the moving truck rolled up, I drove by. I didn't stop, just slowed down. Sophie was snapping at the movers, her sunglasses hiding whatever was left of her dignity. Noah stood on the grass, phone to his ear, pacing in tight circles. I wondered if he ever imagined this moment. I wondered if he knew I'd be the one to bring it. Their downfall wasn't loud. No public meltdowns, no front-page drama, but it was total. Sophie's parents cut them off financially. Their world unraveled. and I didn't have to lift another finger. Sophie's business bled out every major sponsorship. Her once shiny brand became the town's whispered scandal. The woman who'd mocked me in my own kitchen could no longer afford her fancy serums or overpriced lattes. Noah scrambled to find work, any work, but with no degree, no references, and a resume that hadn't been touched in years, he hit dead ends. He ended up in a cramped apartment on the edge of town. My lawyer mentioned it in passing. I didn't ask for the details and I didn't gloat. This wasn't about spite, it was about truth catching up. Meanwhile, my life was quietly blooming into something new. Daniel and I kept meeting, always low-key coffee dates, chats about novels, swapping thoughts on random articles or life's quirks. One day he asked about my writing, and I admitted I'd started a memoir, a way to tell my story, even if it never saw a bookshelf. "You should do it," he said. "Stories like yours, they matter." He didn't call me mom and I didn't need him to. We were building something real, not forced by duty but chosen, and that was everything. One crisp afternoon we wandered through the farmer's market. He grabbed a jar of peach preserves and laughed. "My mom used to make this every summer." The way he said my mom didn't hurt, it felt right, natural. He had a mom and I had a son who didn't see me until it was too late. Some nights I'd sit with my tea, wondering if Noah was sleeping on a bare mattress, if Sophie still wore her designer pajamas, if they looked at each other now and saw the cracks they'd ignored. I didn't miss them. I missed the dream of what we could have been. But that kind of grief? It's a faint shadow fading bit by bit. And pride? That grows when you start loving yourself more than you ever craved their validation. I walked through my old neighborhood one last time before the sale finalized. Not to linger, but to let it go. I passed the elementary school Noah attended, the park where I'd push him on the swings, the corner store where I'd stretch my budget for his favorite snacks. I released it all. I'd given everything to a family that gave nothing back. Now I was giving to someone who might never call me mom but still looked at me with warmth, interest, and respect. Sometimes you don't need a grand redemption arc. You just need peace. And I was starting to feel it deep in my bones. It was mid-November when Noah texted me. One line. "Can we meet?" Just once. I stared at it for ages. It had been weeks since I'd seen him, weeks of a silence heavier than any fight. But something in the message felt different. Not frantic, not blaming, just resigned. We met at a rundown park on the outskirts of town, with creaky benches and a path circling a patchy, dried-out pond. I chose it because it was neutral, free of memories. He was already there, hunched on a bench, hands locked between his knees. He looked up and for a split second he was the boy I remembered, uncertain, waiting for me to guide him. I sat beside him, keeping a careful distance. He cleared his throat. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he said. I nodded, staying quiet. I need to understand." I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope again. Clara's letter, the hospital records, the DNA results. I handed it to him without a word. He didn't open it, just held it in his lap, like he'd memorized every line already. "I did my own test," he said. "After you told me. It's true." I nodded again. "I spent weeks trying to figure out what to do with it," he went on. "And I kept thinking, if I'm not your son, then who am I?" I looked at him, then really looked, and said softly, "You were my child. I loved you like you were mine. But you didn't treat me like a mother." He flinched. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said quickly. "I don't deserve it." "You don't," I said, plain and steady. "But that doesn't mean I hate you." He turned to me, eyes shining. "Then what does it mean?" "It means I finally love myself more than I loved the idea of you." The silence that followed carried weight. He bowed his head. "I thought I was protecting Sophie, standing by her. But I was just hiding behind her, wasn't I?" "You let her rewrite our story," I said. "And you gave her the pen." He nodded, slow and heavy. "I wish I could take it back." "You can't." We sat there, two people tied to a life built on a mistake, untangling it in the sharp November air. Then he said something unexpected. "I hope he's good to you." I blinked, caught off guard. "Daniel," he clarified. "Your son." My breath hitched. "He's kind," I said. "Gentle." He gave a faint smile. "Guess he got that from you." We both let out a tired, quiet laugh. Not happy, not bitter, just real. "I don't want to be in your life if it hurts you," he said at last. "But if there's ever a corner for me," he trailed off. He didn't need to finish. I stood, gazing at the pond, its surface littered with brittle leaves. "I'll think about it," I said. He nodded. "That's more than I expected." As I turned to go, I rested my hand on his shoulder for a moment. And that was it, the final note. Not closure, but clarity. And that was enough. I didn't need to fix him anymore. I didn't need fixing either. I just needed to be free. And I was. Truly, completely. I always thought freedom was a big, flashy word, something for rallies or history books, not for someone like me. But when I turned the key in the bookstore door that morning, I got it. Daniel had called the night before, saying he had something to show me. His voice was light, but there was a quiet weight to it, like something big was brewing. I stepped inside and saw him by the back wall, where a new wooden sign hung above an arched doorway. It read, "The next chapter." I smiled. "What's this?" He handed me a small gleaming brass key. "It's a new space I'm opening," he said. "A cozy reading nook, coffee bar, community talks." "I wanted it to be more than just a shop," Daniel said. "I wanted it to feel like a place where people belong." I rolled the small brass key between my fingers, its weight grounding me. "And you're asking me to open it?" He looked at me, his expression earnest. "I'm asking you to keep it." I stared, caught off guard. His voice softened as he went on. "You gave everything to someone who treated you like you didn't matter. Like you were just part of the scenery. But I see you, Laura. You don't need to earn this. You've done more than enough." My eyes stung with tears and I fought to hold them back. "You don't have to do this," I whispered. "I know," he said simply. "But I want to." I stepped toward the arched doorway beneath the sign, "The next chapter dash," and slid the key into the lock. It clicked smoothly like it was meant to. Inside, soft light poured through high windows, warming the space. Shelves hugged the walls, half filled with novels and biographies. A plush rug lay in the center, next to a cozy armchair and a small table holding a teapot and cups. It was like stepping into a corner of my heart I'd long forgotten. I turned to Daniel, my composure unraveling. "Daniel," he smiled, gentle but sure. "It's yours, Laura, for as long as you want it." I stood in the middle of the room, taking it all in, the scent of fresh wood, crisp pages, and quiet possibility. That night, back in my apartment, I opened my old notebook one last time, its final page still empty. I wrote, "I was a woman who gave until I disappeared. Then I became the woman who claimed herself back, not with anger or vengeance but with quiet truth, with a strength they never saw coming." The next morning I finalized a donation. A chunk of the house sale went to a nonprofit helping women rebuild. Women who'd been overlooked, dismissed, underestimated, just like I was. They called to thank me, but I didn't need their gratitude. Every time I stepped into that bookstore, into the next chapter dash, I remembered who I was now. Not Noah's mother, not Sophie's punching bag, but Laura Bennett, woman, survivor, writer of her own story. I didn't need anyone's approval to start over. Just a key. And now I held it tightly, and this time it didn't unlock someone else's world. It opened mine. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us what you think Laura did right, or what she should have done differently in the comments. We also recommend that you listen to the story of Ellen, a woman who was called not attractive enough by her husband to go to dinner with his new boss, but what Ellen did next silenced her husband forever. To watch this story, just click on the left window on the screen. Enjoy the movie.